gonadotropins or gonadotropins like HMG or FSH can be used alone by themselves. Agonists with gonadotropins, antagonists with gonadotropins. So stimulation protocols with clomiphene citrate. To start with, you all are well versed with clomiphene citrate. A lot of our senior colleagues and senior doctors in this group will be knowing that since years, maybe 20 years or decades, they will be using clomiphene citrate and they are so used to this drug. Very old drug, very friendly drug, and many people have got benefit just by using a clomiphene citrate. And this is a wonderful fertility drug for past 40 years in use. And the main mode of action is to increase the pituitary LH and FSH to promote the follicular growth. Clomiphene induces follicular growth, not ovulation. It doesn't trigger ovulation, but yes, follicular growth it causes. It is a follicle which induces ovulation through positive estrogen feedback. So it is important to get a good size follicle which will induce ovulation through a positive estrogen feedback. So this will induce a surge in the LH hormone levels. So this LH hormone levels will in turn induce a ovulation. So it's very important to get a good size follicle for ovulation and egg release. So it will take care of the ovulation also. So clomiphene citrate action. So what it does is it prevents the estrogen rise and thereby feedback to the pituitary and hypothalamus, wherein it will not identify or nor it will stop the secretion of the FSH, and FSH and LH secretion is increased. So which leads to increase in the gonadotropin levels and follicle size. So this is an important picture to identify and to understand the mechanism of action of a clomiphene citrate of estrogen inhibition. So what are the standard protocols for using the clomiphene citrate? We use generally 50 milligram or 100 milligram concentration. So 50 milligram between we can start from second day or third day. Generally, it is given for 5 days. Yes, it can be started on the fifth day also. It's not necessary that patient has to come on the day 3. When the patient comes on day 5, we can start. So based on their body weight and the age, you can decide whether 50 milligram or 100 milligram of the drug. Clomiphene citrate, we'll learn what is the dose, which day to start, what's the duration of treatment, and how to manage the failures. Clomiphene citrate, you should start at the lowest dose and increase every month if anovulation is happening. If there is no ovulation, suppose with a 25 milligram or 50 milligram, go on increasing till you get a ovulation. So if there is anovulation, you should not use the same dose again. You should increase the dosage of the clomiphene. Do not persist with an elementary dose, but increase at a satisfactory dose. So not with a smaller concentration. The most common question we get is till how much we can increase. Maximum is 150 milligram. More than 150 milligram of clomiphene citrate is not known to cause much benefit. So 150 milligram is the highest. So generally, general dictum, what I'm showing you here is if weight is less than 45 kg, around 25 milligram per kg per day is good enough. But if weight is more than 75 kg, 100 milligram per day is something you can consider. If unsatisfactory response or if there is a prolonged follicular phase, and then you can suggest a suboptimal CC dose and may respond to dose increase. So starting day between 2 to 5 days is good enough, but any of these days are good enough. There is no correlation between a good result if you start on day 2 and not on day 5, nothing like that. So any of these days is good enough. No apparent advantage in using daily dose of more than 150 milligram. Please remember this. I've seen people giving 200 milligram, 300 milligram, which is not going to help. It will be just a cost increasing to the patient as well as it will be harmful to the body. So more than 150 milligram, you don't need it. Clomiphene citrate duration of treatment, how long we should give, how long we should use is the question. Generally 6 ovulatory cycles are good enough. More than 6 cycles are not recommended even by RCOG guidelines. So 6 cycles with the ovulatory cycles, if you achieve the clomiphene citrate, you should say no more clomiphene citrate induction. If there is no, because after 7 cycles, there is no much possibility of a pregnancy. 75% of pregnancies occur in the first 3 cycles only. So even if you are giving 6 cycles, first 3 cycles it should happen. Next 3 cycle, you should be very careful as to why it is not happening. There should be some other confounding factors you should look up. But if it has to happen, first 3 cycles, it will click. So what to do with the clomiphene failures? Why it should be clomiphene failure? So even if there is absolutely no ovulation, that is anovulation with the maximum dose of 150, then we call it as a clomiphene failure. And if there is a side effects, like if follicles fail to rupture or endometrium is very thin, yes, this is a possible happens with the clomiphene citrate side effect, because it causes estrogen deficiency. So when there is estrogen deficiency, thin endometrium is a possibility, because there is no estrogen for which is required for endometrial growth. And if there is no follicular rupture, that is also very common seen in the clomiphene cycles. The next wonder drug is letrozole. Yes, it is a little controversial drug. It was banned for few years because of some other papers brought some bad associations with this drug. It was banned, but yes, then ban was lifted, and now we are using letrozole. Very good drug, and it is helping a lot of people to conceive. In the past, also it has helped a lot of people to conceive, because it's a non-steroidal aromatase inhibitor, and this blocks the conversion of androstenedione to estrogens. So this is also used in the carcinoma breast treatment in postmenopausal women, and that's how, while treating breast cancer women, they discovered that it was also helping the ovulation. So when they were treating the aromatase inhibitors for breast cancer, in those days they observed that it was giving a good follicular size, a increase of the follicular growth. Then they change it over to use in a fertility also. And theoretical advantage of aromatase inhibitors is this does not block estrogen receptors. There is no detrimental effect on endometrium or cervical mucus, and negative feedback mechanism is not turned off. So there is less chance of multicolor follicular development. So you should understand a fact that one of the most important fact is, which is not seen in clomiphene citrate, is a estrogen side effect. So since there's no estrogen there, you will have a thin endometrium. In case of clomiphene citrate, many times you must have seen that. That you don't see here. Number two, there is chance of OHSS there in the clomiphene citrate, which you will not see in the letrozole. So letrozole versus CC. So here you have a lower E2, less follicles with letrozole, and letrozoles, if it's 100 mg, if you use 50 mg with letrozole, almost similar effects on the stimulation of follicles, but endometrial thickness is maintained by letrozole despite much lower E2 at the mid cycle. This is important, especially if you are facing a thin endometrium problem. Don't use clomiphene citrate, prefer to letrozole. So what is the dosage it can be used? Common dosage 2.5 milligram per day is good enough. In few people, they may need 5 milligram per day. Could be one dose or 2.5 mg PD. That is 2.5 mg in the morning and evening. And or you can use 20 milligram single dose, or in the concentrated combination of one tablet, 2 or 3 or 4 tablets per day. The combination can also be used. So there is no fixed protocol. So based on the patient's parameters, you can change the dosage and duration. So next, clomiphene citrate with gonadotropins or gonadotropins only. So see, it should be very important that to know gonadotropins is, it is one of the most helpful drug for any of the anovulatory patients. It's a double-edged sword. It can also cause hyperstimulation or any other complications if not used judiciously. So proper treatment and counseling should be carried out, because this treatment is expensive. Each injection costs a lot of money, and occasionally patients may over-respond, which may prompt us to cancel the cycle because we are afraid of OHSS, or if patient is willing and if IVF facility is available, we can convert it to IVF cycle. Many times we went to do an IUI, but we ended up doing IVF because with little bit drugs also, they had so many follicles as we get in an IVF cycle. So what are the protocols for using this? Is step down protocol. In a sense, if you suspect that you might need a higher dose, but you start with the higher dose initially so that more follicles are recruited to grow to dominancy. But now in between, if you do a scan and you realize that you're having more response, then you reduce the dosage. This is called step down response. So that larger follicle will continue to develop and smaller will undergo atresia, because if you don't step down, if you go straight same dose, then you will have a hyperstimulation. So this is called step down. You see the picture below, it is stepping down. Step up protocol, treatment initiated with the lower dose, because you know patient is thin or young and patient is definitely going to OHSS. If you have a fear, start with a slower dose and then slowly go up as you proceed. So this is safer because there is low risk of OHSS and more useful for softer stimulation. As you see the picture below, that shows the step up regimen. So gonadotropin, usually you can use FSH or HMG. The basic minimum package, what you get as a minimum dosage is 75 international units, and you can use it based on different combinations, either alternate day, daily, or once in 4 days, based on what kind of treatment you are doing, whether IVF or IUI. And monitoring with sonography and estradiol is very important. What we call adequate response in an IUI cycle is at, at least one follicle, maximum 3 follicles, 10 millimeter or more, and rising estradiol levels, and continue the same dose for next 2 to 3 days and monitor it. A dose of 75 international unit may generally lead to development of 1 or 2 follicles only, unless woman is very young or thin, which can hyperstimulate. So when we say about poor response, here we are not getting even one follicle. So what we should do is we should be careful in increasing the dose, step up by 30 to 50%, that is half an ampule. Multi-dose preparations are helpful, and response may be sudden and explosive suddenly. So you should be very careful that suddenly you have so much of a response possible, and give the higher doses for 3 days and then monitor again. Then clomiphene citrate or letrozole with gonadotropin regimen. Clomiphene citrate 50 milligram, 100 milligram or 100 milligram between day 2 to day 5 or day 3 to day 7. Or you can use letrozole 2.5 or 5 milligram with FSH or HMG. Here there is a difference. If you see it, either you can use the HMG or FSH on day 3, day 5, day 7. That is alternate. Or you can use it on day 4 and day 8, or day 4 to 8 daily if the response is poor. So there is no fixed protocol here based on the patient's age, body weight, previous response. You have to modify, and then accordingly HMG can be used even in the later part, that is day 8 onwards also, based on if you're not getting a good, if you're expecting a good response but you're not getting, yes, day 8 also onwards you can start HMG and then you will get a good response. And there are many more permutation combinations, and that is basically based on patient's previous response and present response what you are seeing. Regimen says clomiphene citrate or letrozole followed by gonadotropins or along with gonadotropins. Either you can give first clomiphene and letrozole and then you can start, or clomiphene citrate with gonadotropins also you can give. So once we give them together, the action of both is complementary, but they will be very fast and good response or over response sometimes. So they're difficult to titrate or control. So you should start with the softer stimulation and slowly go up. There is no standard guidelines here, and should monitor very carefully. So how do we monitor? So what are the parameters for monitoring? The best monitoring parameters is with yourself, that is sonography. If you have a scanning machine with yourself, that is your right arm. Always an ultrasound for a fertility specialist is the right arm of the fertility specialist, because we see everything or monitoring everything happens by sonography. Yes, hormone parameters can be monitored, but here it's in-house and what you are seeing is what you're believing. Sonography is something that you can see the follicles so beautifully. I'm showing in the picture adjacent attached. You see nice follicles there. So these are the mainstay of monitoring is your own follicular growth scan in your OPD, and baseline scan and before starting stimulation is very important. And remember one thing, always and always do a transvaginal scan only, because that will give you a higher intensity and better resolution picture compared to abdominal ultrasound, and correct assessment of the number of follicles, or if there is a cyst to start with on a second day, can be seen better on a transvaginal ultrasound. If you don't have ultrasound facility, if you're getting it from a radiologist, please request for a transvaginal ultrasound image only, assessment only. Okay, and baseline to rule out if there is a cyst or if there is something that is not identified, So it's better to do a baseline scan on the day 2 of the cycle, and after 5 days of stimulation, again repeat a scan to know how is the stimulation, whether you need to add gonadotropin or increase the dose idea. So accurate measurement of follicular number and size and endometrial thickness is very important. Estradiol monitoring we do, especially when we give gonadotropins. So gonadotropins like HMG, FSH will give a hyper response. So we don't want to take a chance. So we do a gradual estradiol evaluation, and which will help us to prevent any possible OHSS, because there will be 30 to 50% rise of estradiol per day. So trigger is important. When do you trigger? When do you administer trigger injections like HCG or anything? When follicle size is at least 17 to 18 millimeter, endometrium is 8 millimeter or more, and nice triple line endometrium is what is desired. And IUI should be timed 36 to 38 hours later. For example, if you are doing IUI day after tomorrow, today if follicle is already 18 millimeter, today evening or 10 o'clock if you trigger, day after tomorrow morning 8 o'clock you call the patient for semen preparation, and then at 10, between 10 to 2, that time you can perform an IUI. So what are the drugs that are used for ovulation trigger? HCG injection is most commonly used, cheap, affordable, available everywhere. So HCG in the dose of 5,000 is good enough. In few situations you might need to use 10,000. Otherwise 5,000 HCG is good enough for 99% of the patients. Ovulation occurs generally after 38 to 40 hours after you administer the HCG trigger. So it has a longer half-life, and it also gives a good luteal support. So HCG itself acts as a luteal support. But if there are more follicles, don't give HCG, because this causes hyperstimulation. Please remember, HCG injection is the one which is responsible for OHSS, ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. So if you see more follicles, do not trigger with the HCG. In that situation, remember to use a GnRH analog, that is a triptorelin. The triptorelin injection is the one which is luteolytic. So it will not give a luteal phase support, because it will cause luteolysis, but that will not cause OHSS. So lower risk of OHSS. In this, you can add luteal support later if required. You can add some progesterone pessaries or oral digoxin tablets for a luteal support, because this triptorelin is luteolytic. But this will prevent OHSS. If you are suspecting OHSS, please give the triptorelin injection, not HCG injection. Okay, and this has short duration of action and hardly any risk of OHSS because of luteolysis. But this needs an additional luteal support with a progesterone or a triptorelin. So what luteal phase support is required for IUI? Generally not required. If you are given HCG, that itself take care of luteal phase support, and the corpus luteum after releasing the egg, whatever is remaining, that helps in giving a good luteal phase support. When luteal phase deficiency is suspected, in this case, yes, you may need to administer some kind of a luteal support. Micronized progesterone 200 or 400 milligram is good enough, or HCG can be used, but since its injection is painful, we don't advise. We advise tablet, either oral or vaginal tablets, as a luteal phase support. Important part is what is the result of an IUI, how successful it is. So success is, yes, it can vary somewhere from 5 to 6% till 15%. This is a range. And multiple pregnancy chances is also around 10% to 15%. Always remember to tell your patients before you start that this is not a very highly promising technique. IUI success is not very high, because patients will think that IUI is IVF, they'll get confused about it, and they'll expect too much from an IUI cycle, and if they don't get pregnant in one cycle, they'll sit on your. So please counsel them before that IUI is just an extension of trying naturally. Success rate is somewhere between 8 to 15% range only, so that they understand and they don't have too much expectation from an IUI cycle, because this is what is general success everywhere for an IUI. When is how much success? So first cycle, if it has to click, 51% people will get considered in the first IUI cycle. Second cycle, maybe another remaining 20%, and next 12% in third cycle. So maximum 3 IUI cycles you can do, and not more than that. How many IUIs we can do is the question I generally get by many gynecologists. 3 IUI cycles, good ovulator cycles is maximum. Because after 3 cycles, pregnancy rates are not high. And you can see the analysis of 9,963 cycles which have been given here. So the success after third cycle is not great. If it has to happen, it will happen in the first cycle 50%, not subsequent to. That's it. Then next course will be IVF, if not IUI. Thank you for attending an IUI. Next, I will tell about the stimulation of IVF. So I'll be sharing a IVF.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, some questions about IUI. Will you answer at the end or before this?
We will answer all questions together in the end, madam, because some of the questions might get answered in my subsequent session of
Okay,
IVF.
sir.
So
Okay,
I will answer in that.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
So next, what we are going to see is the stimulation protocols for IVF. So this is very important because some of you who are attending and some of my doctors do stimulate for an IUI and send directly patient for only egg pickup. That is one possibility. And we do have such kind of facility wherein you can stimulate yourself. We train you to stimulate your patients for an IVF, and you can directly send us for only the egg pickup. So stimulation. So what are the issues in this? What are the issues do we face? We face mainly prevention of untimely LH surge. Suddenly LH surge happens, and how do we prevent? So sometimes while doing an IUI or natural cycle monitoring, also you must have observed, sir, we are giving injections and suddenly patient has ovulated. By the time I call on the 10th day or 11th day, I see there's free fluid and already there's a perfect procurement, patient is ovulated. How do we prevent it? So here is the role of using agonist or antagonist. So this is the difference between a basic stimulation for an IUI and an IVF stimulation. So using an agonist or antagonist will prevent untimely LH surge, and optimal stimulation is recombinant FSH or recombinant hormones or versus urinary hormones, or FSH versus HMG. And what is the dose? So I will discuss each of these. So first is agonist or antagonist, prevention of LH surge. The GnRH action you all know. GnRH helps in stimulation by the hypothalamus. So pulsatile secretion will help the pituitary to release FSH and LH from the anterior pituitary. That will help in the follicular growth, subsequent growth of the estradiol, eggs, and progesterone. So these are the few pictures. Your pituitary has gonadotropin receptors, wherein the secretion, the GnRH agonist will come and sit on the pituitary receptors, and then that will help them to release FSH and LH. So initially, if released in a small quantity, that causes flare. Flare in the sense sudden spurt of the FSH and LH, and it helps to release the good amount of FSH and growth of the follicle. But continuously, if you secrete, if you give GnRH, what will happen? All the receptors going to get occupied, and no more new receptors to secrete FSH. So this is what is the mechanism used for down regulation. This is called as down regulation by the pituitary. So this is what is used. From outside, we administer GnRH agonist. So these drugs will help in occupying all the receptors on the pituitary, and there is no endogenous secretion of FSH LH because there is a prolonged suppression of the receptors and down regulation. And GnRH analog administration, first initially one dose, yes, it will suddenly help it to upregulate and flare effect and release the FSH and LH. This mechanism we use in poor responders, wherein less eggs are there. We use it initially 1 or 2 doses so that more FSH is released and we get a good response. But in hyperresponders or in polycystic ovarian disease, wherein we expect extra response, we suppress them by giving extra dosage from the day 21 of the previous cycle to down regulate, so that internalization of the agonist receptor happens and then decrease in the number of receptors. So that's why it's called as down regulation. Internalization of the agonist receptor will decrease in the number of receptors. The paradoxical suppression of pituitary gonadotropin synthesis and liberation, that is desensitization, happens. So this is what happens with the GnRH analogs. So what are the few commonly ones GnRH analogs you must have heard? Lupride, Hippo, so anything, or Lupride daily doses. So these are the few commonly used GnRH analogs which are used for down regulation or desensitization. So agonist and antagonist, you must have heard these names commonly. So since the advent of the IVF stimulation, initially agonist was very much in use. Antagonist came into picture recently, past 10 to 15 years. Antagonist caught up because of the lots of advantages which are going to tell you next few slides. So agonist cycles, Day2 FSH and LH are in the range of around 1 to 2 because why? Because they are already down regulated and suppressed. Because you started from the previous cycle, 21st day, you start with the agonist injections. So they are suppressed and FH and LH values are low. But in antagonist cycles, Day2 FH and LH are higher. So these endogenous levels contribute significantly to the gonadotropin pool in poor responder patients. So what is the advantage of antagonists? So antagonists, now 99.9% of cycles of IVF what we do are antagonist cycles because it's a shorter duration of treatment. You start on the second day of the cycle, but when an agonist, you start on the previous cycle, 21st day. So it's a longer day duration. Here you use less dose of gonadotropins because suppression is not occurred here. So there is already endogenous FH/LH is there. So you need to supplement less dosage of gonadotropins. That's the advantage. And there's rapid reversibility. If you want to stop also, or if you want to reduce the dose also, you can reverse it. But in agonist cycle, you cannot reverse so fast. And in poor responders, there's still controversy, which is good, yes, but antagonist is much better. And in OHSS, use of GnRH agonist as ovulation trigger can be done. See, this is very important. I was telling you in the previous IVF stimulation also, triptorelin can be used as a trigger that will prevent OHSS by luteolysis, which can be done only in antagonist cycle. Otherwise, in agonist cycle, since you already suppressed with agonist, we cannot use again agonist for trigger. Here you have to use HCG only in agonist. So antagonist advantage is OHS chances are lesser. So GnRH agonists, I will tell you about a long protocol. This is we also call as a long protocol or GnRH agonist protocol. So here what we do is, you can see here we have started, can you see the red box? We have started on the previous cycle. So this straight line is the starting of the menses. So previous cycle only we have started with the GnRH agonist and we are down regulated. And then again from second day we are starting with the injection. So here this much duration is extra number of drugs and extra down regulation happens in agonist long protocol. And then subsequently we start with the gonadotropin injections. And once the cycle occurs, you can reduce dose of gonadotropin, GnRH agonist, when you are going to start the gonadotropins because already the down regulation has set in. And in agonist short protocol, you can start from the second day. You don't have to start on the day 21 of the previous cycle as just we saw. That was the long protocol. Here GnRH agonist only short protocol. Here you start on the second day of the cycle with the GnRH agonist, and from next day you can start with the gonadotropins. Once follicle size reaches 18 millimeter, you can use HCG injection for having a trigger and egg release. GnRH antagonist. In antagonist, there are two types. One is multiple dose fixed protocol or the flexible protocol. Fixed protocol is no matter what happens and what is the follicular size, around day 6, you start with the GnRH agonist. You start the gonadotropin injections on the second day. Every day you give gonadotropin injections. Around day 6, you give antagonist injection till the follicle becomes 18 millimeter and then use HCG trigger and then do the egg pickup and embryo transfer. This is a fixed protocol. There is no change. So there is no need to change. But in multiple dose flexible protocol, what happens? You start with the gonadotropins, but wait for follicle to reach around 13 to 14 millimeter. Do ultrasound around 6th day or 7th day of injection, and you see that the follicle has reached around 13 to 14 millimeter. Then you add an antagonist, 0.25 milligram. Then once follicles become 18 millimeter and above, you give HCG trigger, then do the egg pickup and then embryo transfer. So this is the difference between a flexible and the fixed protocol. This is flexible, you see the size, but in fixed protocol, you don't see around 6th day you start off. How do you start? What's the dose to start is important because it's not same for everybody. I told you everybody has a different tailored dress, so in the same way different protocols and different doses. So what is mainly based on the age, antral follicle count, and anti-Mullerian hormone. So the younger the age, lesser the dose. Older the age, the increased dose. Antral follicle count, if they are more, reduce the dose. If they are less, increase the dose. AMH, that shows the egg reserve, that is follicular reserve. If there is less AMH, you might need a more dosage. So what are the things you consider before you start? Especially you don't want patient to go into OHSS because today all clinics are OHSS free clinics. So clinical competency is measured by how OHSS free is your clinic. So it's very important that you don't have OHSS. First thing in mind before you start simulation. So check for previous history of OHSS, check for polycystic ovary, check for serum MMH if there is more than 15 picomoles, patient is young, low BMI, in history of allergy. So these are the very high risk candidates who might get into OHSS and ascites, hydrothorax, pneumothorax, all different complications will start. So please identify the risk factors. And one more study what we did in NOVA with ourselves, we had partners EV Spain. So what we did is, what is the ethnic difference of ovarian aging in Spanish woman and Indian woman? So EV Spain and we in India did a study. We found out that Indian women have 6 years early ovarian aging, in the sense similar ovarian reserve markers and ovarian response were observed in women with a 6-year age difference. But Spanish women, if at 40 years of age, how much follicular or ovarian reserve they have, Indian women have so much less reserve at 34 years of age. In the sense, ovarian aging is faster in Indian women compared to the European woman, Spanish woman. So these results help clinician to counsel infertile women when discussing ART technology outcomes, especially based on age and ethnic background. Especially when we read the books written by foreign authors, we cannot take verbatim from there and apply it on Indian women, because in Indian women there is an ethnic difference, especially as long as the ovarian aging is concerned. So please remember, when you are counseling, don't counsel based on what the Western counterparts are saying, because our Indian woman ovarian aging is 6 years earlier. So next is to see antral follicle count. What is antral follicle count? When you do a scan on second day of cycle, you see in the picture 1. Can you see here hardly one egg, one follicle, and another is small one here. But you see other side, you see there are so many follicles. So which scenario would you like? Yes, obviously the second scenario, because there's good number of follicles and we are happy to have good number of good response. But in cases like first picture, that in low antral follicle count and low, they will have low AMH also. You will have challenges. But in second scenario, you will have better follicular yield. So what do you expect based on the antral follicles? If there are 4 follicles or less, it's very poor, and there is hardly any response. If they are between 5 to 11, low response, but there's a high cancellation rate. See, why I'm telling you all this is, this we have to counsel before we start IVF stimulation, because patients will have high expectation, because the cost will also be involved, will be more. So based on these, we'll be able to counsel the patient. See, your follicle reserve is very low. So since the low follicular reserve, low egg reserve, it is possible that you may not get good number of eggs, or stimulation will be very low. Pregnancy chances are lower. If it is 12 to 20 follicles, normal response. But more than 20, again, it should be a careful. It's a double-edged sword. Either too low or too high, both are bad. So if it's more than 20, then it could be PCOS or hyper response, and look out for a hyperstimulation. So this is a very important hormone, anti-Mullerian hormone, AMH. So maximal expression occurs in the pre-antral and small antral follicles, and this will tell us what is the follicular reserve in the lady as of now at this particular age when she has come to you for treatment. And this AMH is secreted by granular cells of the recruited follicles until they become sensitive to FSH, and it's a regulator of the recruitment, preventing the depletion of all the primordial follicle pool at once. And as the age of the lady advances, the AMH level goes down. So it means that the follicular reserve, as you all are aware, will reduce when the age is advances. So in same way, as the age is more, the AMH levels also will go down. So what is our goal? Our goal is to have good number of eggs and a live pregnancy. So for that, normal responder is more important. So it is seen by the data that when you have higher number of egg yield or follicular yield, their pregnancy rate or live birth both are higher compared to, you see the graphs here, the previous graph what you saw and this graph what you see, both live birth rates are increasing as your egg numbers are increasing, and the cumulative pregnancy rates are more. Cumulative pregnancy means if you have less number of eggs, maybe you will have one cycle of transfer. If you had more eggs, you may have two cycle or three cycle. So when you have three more transfers, the cumulative pregnancy rate is going to be higher. So pregnancy rates will be higher when the follicles or eggs retrieved are more, because patients will ask, so what doctor, if I have less AMH or less follicular reserve, even if there is one egg, what is the problem? So this is a problem. The statistics clearly show that if there are less number of eggs, if there is less follicular number, less AMH, the pregnancy chances are going to be low, live birth are going to be low. As per data what I'm showing you, higher the number of eggs or follicles, the higher the pregnancy rates and live birth rate also. So antagonist protocol starts on the second day. So very important to do a baseline scan. Always do a baseline scan on the second day to rule out any cysts are there, any twist, cycle ovulation has happened and corpus luteum is not resolved yet. If that is there, of any other problems you see, do on the day 2 scan is compulsory, a baseline scan. And for regular responders, what you're going to use, generally we use around 200 to 225 international units of recombinant FSH or HMG hormones till we, and then around between 6 day to 7 day, we add an antagonist injection so that there is no premature LH surge. And once it becomes 18 millimeter or above the follicle, which happens on the around 9th to 10th day of the injection, we give the HCG injection for the release of the egg, and after 36 to 38 hours, we do the egg pickup by transvaginal ultrasound. By TVS route, we pass a needle and we remove the follicles. And OHSS is a possibility when the we have observed, or Brissinger et al. What he has written in his paper is, on an average between 17 to 19 follicles and above, you may have a possibility of OHSS. So if you have more than 17 follicles or about 19 follicles, it's not wise to transfer the embryos in the same cycle because there is a possibility of OHSS. Hyperstimulation is a possibility. So please freeze it. Freeze all the embryos and subsequently next cycle you can transfer them. But same cycle if you transfer, you might end up with a OHSS as this graph says. If there is more follicle, there is more chance of OHSS. So regular responders, you can use around JNRH of antagonist cycle and around 200 225. And if you want to freeze, instead of HCG, you can use agonist trigger. I was telling you agonist trigger in the previous talk. Agonist trigger like triptorelin will help in luteolysis, and then chances of OHSS are very low. So this GnRH agonist trigger, it could be decapeptyl or leupride or any trigger, helped us to make a OHSS free clinic. So we don't have OHSS now. Very rarely we see OHSS because of the agonist trigger instead of HCG. We don't use HCG much if you are going to freeze all the embryos. So patient has a risk of OHSS. You can start with a lower dose of stimulation, say like 150. In the previous slide you saw the stimulation starting dose was 225. Here I made 150 because I know patient is young or thin or PCO or any high risk factor is there. We can go into OHSS, which I don't want. So I'll start with the lower dose of 150, and definitely I'm going to use a agonist trigger, that is triptorelin or a leupride trigger, based on the follicular size around 18 millimeter and above. We are going to do the agonist trigger, and we're going to freeze all embryos because of chance of OHSS. We are not going to transfer. So patient at the risk of OHSS, you can take the embryo and freeze them, or you can take the oocyte itself and freeze them. Because we also freeze oocytes. There are a lot of requests we get from women who don't want to, who may not have married yet, or who don't want to have a sperm to be mixed with eggs and freeze eggs alone. So we freeze eggs alone without making an embryo also. But yes, oocyte or embryo vitrification for delayed embryo transfer is going to be almost same. There is no difference. So what is the starting dose? What is the dose I should give? Is the first question for any IVF. Yes, if less than 30 years, a young lady or a thin lady, not very heavily built, you can use around 200 international units of Recagon or 187 units of Gonalef or 225 international units of Humox. So this is the commonly used drugs. I'm telling you, you can use whatever brand you like, not this brand exactly, but this is what generally used. If age is 31 to 35, look for enterofollicle count and AMH because it's likely that the follicular reserve is low. In them, you can use 200 Recagon with 75 HMG or 225 of Gonalef with 75 Humog or something, this kind of combination. If you're using HMG alone, between 300 to 450. 450 IU is the maximum. So what's the maximum dose of HMG you can use? You might ask. So 450, like clomiphene citrate, 150 was the maximum. So in HMG, 450 is the maximum. More than that, there is no use. If age is 35 and above, it is possible that enterofollicle count, antimullerian hormone will be low, indicating a low ovarian reserve. Counsel properly because they may want to go to egg donor program, not want to take risk of their own eggs because if they are less already. In them, if they wish to start their own, even after counseling, start with 225 units of recombinant FSH or HMG and 450 units of HMG. In PCOS, always look at the BMI and age. If they're thin and young, use 150 only, not more. If more than 30 years or obese, then you can use little higher dose of recombinant hormone or HMG. How do you monitor in IVF cycle? Since we are using recombinant hormones, HMG hormones, or higher concentration, it's very important that we see how is the growth, whether it's very less or very hyper stimulated growth. We need to identify. So after 5 days of injection, you please do a scan and see, and then you assess, and then you do the dose adjustment. If the follicle has reached 12 millimeter to 40 millimeter range, think of starting an antagonist so that there is no premature LH surge. Antagonist, generally we start 0.25 milligrams subcutaneous. Generally brand are Citrorelix, Asporelix, a lot of, you must have heard these injections. So these are the antagonist brands which are going to be 0.25 milligram. And leading follicle, when it's 40 millimeter or more, we have to start. 12 to 40 millimeter is the range where you can think of starting. Antagonist has to be given every 24 hours and should not miss it. If you skip it, it might happen that the efficiency of antagonist is not there and LSRs can happen. We have seen this also when the patient misses an injection. That's why if patient is on IVF stimulation, not a single day they should miss the injection. Every day injections are compulsory and to be taken. Normally 3 to 5 doses are required for antagonist. So this is a simple algorithm. You can take a screenshot of this. Second day, do a TVS scan and see everything is fine or no. Start the hormones FSH or HMG based on whatever you prefer. And 6th or 7th day, you do the scan to identify whether you should start the antagonist and what is the FSH dose adjustment you need. And on 10th day, again you do, and if required, E2 progesterone. And then if follicles are around 17 to 18 millimeter and above, think of triggering and then oocyte retrieval. This is the flow. Luteal support, as soon as we take the eggs out, we start with the luteal support. We start with the macronized progesterone 400 milligram twice a daily, or we start with the dydrogesterone 10 mg orally. And after doing embryo transfer, around 14th day after embryo transfer, we do a pregnancy test. Initially, the best way to identify is using a serum beta HCG. Test is the most sensitive, and it will give us a report saying whether the patient is pregnant or not. And next important is donor recipient cycle. Yes, if the follicular reserve is very low, and if the AMH is low, if there is no egg reserve left, then there is no option that other than they have to take eggs from a egg donor. So the principle is in egg donor cycles, there is little flexibility in changing. Yes. So it's important that you identify a good donor who has good egg reserve. So here there is a flexibility of changing the day of OPU, and recipient has a larger window and plan to have the recipient ready early. And donor screening, you have to check for suitability of anesthesia, ovarian reserve, and ovarian volume and length more than 28 millimeter, and AFC should be more than 15, and AMH you can do, and they should counsel them and also do the pre-anesthetic assessment. Recipient should be suitable for carrying a pregnancy, and anything that prevents them from carrying a pregnancy should be checked. Endometrial receptivity needs to be checked by a mock cycle. Donor recipient cycles, first put the donor recipient both on OC pills and withdraw so that the cycle can be matched. The donor can be started on antagonist protocol, just as I told you. On the day 2, you start with injection, add antagonist in between. Recipient can be suppressed if she is having periods, not for patients with premature ovarian failure. Preparation of recipient should start at least 2 days before stimulation of the donor. So generally we give estradiol tablets like Proganova 2 mg twice a daily for 4 days, and then 4 mg twice a day. Can after 7 to 8 days, and continue the same if endometrium is 8 millimeter above. You see the attached picture, a nice 3-layer endometrium picture. Can you see? If less than, if endometrial thickness is less, add 2 mg twice a day vaginally. But maximum up to 12 mg per day is good enough. Continue on same dose till the day of OPU for the donor, so that these estradiol tablets, what you started, will help increasing the endometrial thickness. So what is the luteal phase support? So from the day of pickup of the donor, for the recipient, you start with the micronized progesterone 400 mg twice a day vaginally, and ET can be done either 3 days, or if you're doing a blastocyst, 5 days later, embryo can be transferred. We don't transfer more than 2 embryos, generally 1, sometimes very rarely 2. And patients with poor responders, means they have very less eggs, but still they want to try with their own eggs. There is 1 or 2 follicles only we can see, but yes, they want to try. You can start with 300 international units of recombinant FSH or HMG and add an antagonist around day 6 to 7, and then you trigger when follicle becomes 18 millimeter or more. And clomiphene citrate with the one more protocol is a soft protocol or minimum stimulation protocol. So this is more in vogue recently, wherein we give less number of drugs, because you give less or more, the result is the number of eggs are going to be almost same. So what we have done is, recently this is a minimum stimulation program. So this is a, what we are doing is start with the clomiphene citrate initial part. So once we start with the clomiphene citrate, before that we prime them with estradiol. Initial days, last luteal phase, during the last phase of the luteal phase, we give them estradiol, and when the cycle starts, we start on the clomiphene citrate tablets, and then alternate day of HMG can be given. So it's not every day. Around day 6 you start, not initially also. Injections can be started late, day 6, day 8, day 10, like that. And then you can add an antagonist when follicle size becomes around 14 millimeter, and then you trigger with a CG and go ahead. So this is a minimal stimulation program wherein you use less number of drugs, less dosage of drugs, and quality of eggs will be good. So retrospective analysis of 46 women in poor responder according to Bologna criteria. So wherein we try to, what they have done is embryo accumulation. They have collected and accumulated embryo over some period of time, and they have done minimum ovarian stimulation and conventional. What we saw till now was conventional. What I told you just now with the minimum drugs with the clomiphene citrate and alternate day HMG was a minimum ovarian stimulation MOS. When the embryo quality was compared, for the surprise, they found that the minimum ovarian stimulation criteria had better quality of eggs, better number of eggs, and progesterone values are much better, and good quality embryos were more compared to the conventional protocol. So in low responders, it is always better to use a minimal stimulation and not So can poor responders be treated effectively? Yes, they can be treated effectively. And by what technique? Home donation. Yes. See, one thing, please remember, patients, most of the time, some patients come late. They come 35 years or above to you. They will have a low ovarian reserve, they will have low AMH, and they want you to do miracle. Please do something, doctor. With my own eggs, I want a baby. They'll sit and cry and everything. But it's your foremost duty as a physician to counsel them that it is not such a clear cut way. It's not a rosy picture. You can try. But the best way for such people with low ovarian reserve or almost any hardly any eggs is a egg donation. So please put it in their mind that you may have to go for a home donation program. You will have to get eggs from an egg donor to carry a pregnancy. And what are the other alternatives, adjunctives it's called. So in IUI also, these are some of them are what I'm telling you can be used. High dose gonadotropin can be done. Low dose agonist, GnRH agonist can be done. Flare protocol, stop protocol, ultra short protocol, or using adjectives like pyridostigmine, oral L-arginine, GnRH antagonist, OCPs, DHEA like OEGND-SR, testosterone, letrozole, growth hormone, LH, natural cycle, aspirin, and all these are permutation combination because this is a blind area. All of them are being used, but most of them doesn't have any role and there hardly any evidence for them, and we don't recommend routine use of these things. Yes, is it possible that prayer can influence the success? Even this study has been done and published in Journal of Reproductive Medicine in 2001. Prayer group had a higher pregnancy rate of 50%, and control group had only 26%. It's left to individual faith. And live birth rate reduces as ovarian aging happens. You see, as the age is advancing here, the live birth per cycle rate is slowly coming down. So you should always counsel the patients like in this chart what you're seeing. Your age is higher, your live birth rate or pregnancy rate is going to be definitely lower, and especially when 35 and above, it's going to be drastically lower. Okay, so you have to tell the patients and clear them that when the age is more, pregnancy chances are very low. So after 40, you see the decline, the way it is happening, and miscarriage and ovarian aging. So the miscarriage rate is not only pregnancy rates are lower, miscarriage rates are higher as the ovarian aging happens. And odds of a birth in relation to woman's age and number of eggs fertilized or embryo transfer is lower as the age advances. Can you see these parameters here? They are all going downhill as the age advances. So in poor responders, oocyte quality and age is beyond repair. And they'll say, please give some drugs, doctor, like DHEA, some people end up giving. None of them are going to improve really the ovarian reserve. So ASRM, American Society for Reproductive Medicine, clearly says that futile treatment is not ethically justified and unnecessary treatment like this should not be administered. There is no really effective treatment for the low ovarian reserve or poor responder. You cannot stimulate follicles which are not there in the first place. You cannot bring it back. You cannot put it from outside. It's not going to happen. So, not every patient is the same because they come through a lot of hardships and they have spent a lot of money. They have too much of handled a lot of social stigma and other things. Yes, but then they should be more courageous and optimistic, thick-skinned, or having foresight and having more stamina to undergo further treatment. And human fertility window will reduce. The optimal fertility is up to 32 age. Then the declining fertility starts. And almost at 40, there is almost end of fertility and then followed by menopause. And there is a fall of number of follicles as well as the egg quality. So this graph also says the same. One more thing which is not really studied is when the age is more, not only the egg reserve is low, there is also aneuploidy rates are high. Almost 77% of the oocytes are aneuploid at 40 years or above. So you should remember to tell them that the pregnancy may not happen with few eggs because there is a possibility that they are genetically abnormal. That's the aneuploidy rate what you're seeing there, 77%. See the loss of chromosomes when we do PGTA in our patients, some patients we do PGTA and we get reports of each abnormalities. And it's very important to show them the charts like this, that as age advances, the live birth rate reduces. At 42 years, it is 4.2. At 43, live birth rate is 3.3. At 44.6. As age advances, live birth rate, clinical pregnancy rate, beta HCG rate, everything goes down. So this is the importance of the age. Thank you for attending the session. I hope it was useful for all of you, especially our aim is to learn the safe stimulation, optimum stimulation, preventing the complication, different strategies and ways of stimulation protocols, and to achieve the better pregnancy rate. I thank you for attending today's session, and I welcome any questions one by one.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, Dr. Anupama Patil from Gadag, sir.
Hello. Tell me that.
Sir, good evening and thank you for the very good session, sir. So my first question is, how to prevent premature LH surge in an IUI cycle? Just as we do in an IVF cycle, can we
Yes.
add an antagonist in an IUI cycle if the cost is not a factor?
Yes, obviously, it's a very good question. And you should use an antagonist in IUI cycle also, especially in two scenarios. One scenario, suppose if endometrial thickness is not caught up. Sometimes you see the early ovulation on the 8th day or 9th day, follicle has come already 16 millimeter, 14 millimeter, and then you don't know what to do now. So in them, you start antagonist. So you start antagonist so that there's no early ovulation, and you start with the estradiol tablet so that the endometrial thickness catches up to the thickness, the follicular size, because if the endometrium is thin and follicle is already released, it's not going to give a pregnancy. So one is you can keep them on estradiol and antagonist so that the endometrium catches up, and then once the endometrium catches up, then you can ovulate. That is number one. Number two, if you don't want an early LHR, suppose you tomorrow is a Sunday, day after tomorrow is Sunday, you don't want to do an IUI on a Sunday, you have some program somewhere you want to go, you want to delay by a day, you want to go on Monday, yes, you start an antagonist, there will be no follicular release, and later you can do an IUI once you are back. So in these scenarios, wherein LH surge is going to happen early, if you wish to use an antagonist in an IUI cycle, yes, you are welcome to use.
So to prevent failure of the IUI cycle also, can we add? Sir?
No, failure of IUI cycle depends on various other factors also. So antagonist use does not per se give you the success of an IUI. Antagonist is just going to wait or delay the LH surge. Till you are an antagonist cycle, there will be no LH surge. If you want to catch one more follicle is coming up and it might catch up and you will have 2 follicles to ovulate, yes, that will increase the chance of pregnancy in them. Yes, definitely you can wait and then you can use an antagonist in such a cycle.
The second question is, name of pen injectors for HMG, sir.
Name of?
Pen injectors.
Pen injections are not there in HMG as far as I know. Most of them comes as a prepared formulations. Manapur, I'm not sure. Pre-filled syringe.
So my next question is,
Manapur
estradiol monitoring, when to do and what are the levels we should be careful?
Estradiol you have to do when you feel that there is a hyperstimulation. If there are more than 3 follicles in an IUI cycle, you can do estradiol. If you find estradiol levels are rising more than 300, should be careful in an IUI cycle. In an IVF cycle, if it is more than 2000, we predict that it could go into hyperstimulation. Or in the beginning of the cycle, sometimes on the second day, you find some cysts are there. Whether to start stimulation or no, always there is a confusion. In them, if you do on the second day, if you do estradiol levels, if it is more than 50, you cannot start. So it should be less than 50 on the second day. So in the beginning and in the end, both ways it helps to monitor estradiol.
Okay. So what about the dual trigger?
Yes. See, dual trigger, there is 2 things in this. One is dual trigger you call when you are giving agonist, that is GnRH agonist injection along with the HCG. So I told you agonist causes luteolysis. So since it causes luteolysis, you want to give some HCG like 2000 international units just to keep the luteal phase intact. in those patients wherein you expect a hyperstimulation, yes, this can be dual stimulation can be given. Or if earlier HCG,
So what should be the gap between the two injections, sir?
no, we can give it together. There's no need to maintain a gap.
So what is the dose of triptorelin for the trigger?
We generally give, it comes a pre-filled syringe of 0.1 milligram. We give 2 injections, that is 0.2 milligram. 0.1 is also good enough. You can give decapeptyl if you are giving, you can give 0.2, 2 injections.
So what should be the time interval between gonadotropin and the antagonist, sir, if you are adding?
If you are adding, there's no time interval as such. 30 minutes is good enough. Up to 6 hours is also good enough. There is nothing time limit. 30 minutes is the good enough time.
So what is the role of steroids, sir? Some people add steroids during the cycle.
No, there is no role of steroids as it is, and there is no need to add it. It's not necessary.
So where to give the subcutaneous injections, sir?
Subcutaneous injections of recombinant hormones, we can give it around 2 inches away from the umbilicus, around that area,
Yes.
or on the thigh also. So outer aspect of the thigh also we can.
So gonadotropins should be in the injections,
Gonadotropin,
sites of injections.
if it's an intramuscular injection, we can give it in the buttocks.
Thank you, sir.
We have one more question here by Dr. Sana. That is, what is the best time to give injection, either in the morning or in the evening? Yes, you can give any time. It's your convenience and patient's convenience. Sometimes patients want to come after the office and take it in the evening. Yes, we give. Sometimes they want to give in the take in the morning, early morning, and go to office. Yes, we can give, and we can do. Another question asked is the luteal phase support required even if the ET is not being done in that cycle? Is it required after one pickup? If yes, what is the logic? No, luteal phase support, if you are not doing the embryo transfer, it is not required. That is number one. In some patients, we do not give luteal phase, but progesterone, like what we give, why we give Meprate or Pamlodipine or general progesterone is just so that they have cycle on time. If you, especially if you use the agonist trigger, it causes luteolysis. So in such situations, we add the progesterone only for getting cycle on time, not for luteal phase support. For luteal support, it's not used. After one pickup, some people, if you use agonist trigger, we use progesterones for getting cycle on. Anybody wishes to ask any questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes,
sir, Dexona can be used in PCOD?
Dexona.
Hello.
Dexona. No, it's not required. It's not required.
Not required, sir.
Not required. Absolutely not. There is no.
Okay.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, in IVF stimulation, sometimes day 10 or day 12, some follicles will be 17 or 18 mm, and some follicles are 12 to 13 mm. That time, what to do, sir?
Yeah, you always look for average number of follicles. So there's always the law of averages. So once the majority of the or at least around 30% of the follicles or 20% of the follicles, if they have reached around 18 millimeter, it is good time to do that. Because once they have reached 18 millimeter, you will have 36 hours window. So other follicles which are around 15 millimeter also going to catch up by that time. So if there are at least some 20 to 30% follicles are 18 millimeter and around that range, you can do. No need to wait for other follicles to catch up because these might deteriorate.
Oh.
Sir?
Yes, please.
Sir, Letrose usually gives monofollicular growth, you said.
Yes,
when you combine Letrose with gonadotropins, does it increase the number of follicles or it remains the same?
No, it does increase. If you are using letrozole, if you are using clomiphene citrate with gonadotropin, the increase is much more as compared to letrozole with gonadotropin.
Okay.
But advantage is endometrial will be good in letrozole cycles, especially in those people wherein thin endometrium is expected. Letrozole is active.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
What about the CP regimen taken for 10 days and all?
Which regimen?
Sometimes clomifene can be given for 10 days
Yes.
for the poor patients who cannot afford gonadotropics.
Yes.
And what
See,
combining
yes. See, this is clomifene citrate can be given. If you saw my last slide, that slide showed the clomifene citrate being straight for 10 days. We are giving clomifene citrate. So that protocol is used for the poor responders also. It is not just for poor patients, poor responders also that can be used. And it itself acts as an antagonist and prevents the early release of the LH. The LH early release does not happen as long as you are using the clomifene citrate. As itself, CC itself acts as an antagonist. So it. I'll show you if I have a slide here. Yes, you can keep asking. Any doubts?
So what about combining letrozole with CC, sir?
So letrozole, the best advantage is monofocal development and no headache of having a thin endometrium. That is important, and we see it helps a lot. So generally we use letrozole now because we don't want too many follicles in the IVA cycle. That's it.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, in a low resource setting like a basic IUI clinic, for double IUI, on the second time IUI, the patient husband is getting very less amount of semen. Then how to proceed, sir, for double IUI?
Always do a single IVA. Double IVA is not always required. If you are timing it well, the evidence has suggested that one IUI is good enough. You don't need two IUIs. So if you are doing a single IUI, that is going to help you. You don't need double IUI.
In case
hello, sir.
follicle, in
But
case
they say
follicle not
male-
ruptured.
No, in case follicle has not ruptured, when follicles take up to around say 40 hours for it to rupture. So you cannot
Okay.
assess the follicular rupture when you are doing an IUI. You may not observe it because there will be a small gap and from where the ovulation would have happened. You may not
Okay.
see a clear cut free fluid, you may not see a crenation typical patterns. For ovulation
Okay.
confirmation, you call them couple of days later. Then
Okay.
retrospectively you can confirm if the ovulation had happened or not. If it had not
Okay.
happened, and then you can say next cycle you can consider doing it twice. But then if it
Okay.
not happened with your HCG injection, then how sure you are that from second it can going to happen with the second IUI? It's going to be same. You
Okay.
can time it between 36 to 40 hours. You have to time your IUI and do one IUI. It's good enough. It is
Okay.
natural for them that they may not be able to give a sample again. I mean, good same amount of sample in the next day, which is quite
Okay.
common. So it's not
Okay.
recommended.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, sir. But they say if there is a male factor infertility, better to go for a 2 IUI. Hello,
If there is a male factor infertility,
infertility.
you-
Huh.
I mean to, so you mean to understand that there is a oligospermia basically, less number of sperms. So if there are less number of sperms, each
Huh.
sample what you are going to take will contain exactly almost the same number of sperms. That will be low count only. So the motility and capacitation and the strength of the sperms to reach an egg is going to be same. You do it today and again you repeat it tomorrow. It's going to be same number of sperms, same motility parameters and everything. So there is no double advantage of having a IUI two times in male fertility. Number one. Number two, if the sperms are very low, less than 10 million, it's not even recommended to do an IUI because IUI will not help them. ICSI is what is required in them. So,
But if it is less than 5,000, but if it is more than 5,000 and less than 10,000,
yeah, even that will have a less pregnancy because see, this is pre-wash of what we're telling. Before washing, when we do semen preparation, we wash the semen when we took the best good and fertile sperms out, and then the count will be drastically lower. It will be less than 3 million sometimes, most of the times. So 10 million, what you are seeing is a pre-wash count. So here we are going to wash and concentrated fertile sperms we are going to inject. So that will going to be still lesser. So in them you do 1 or 2 makes no difference.
okay. Then when do you ask DNA fragmentation index, sir?
DNA fragmentation we index, we ask when there is a count is also good, but then we are not seeing pregnancy or we are seeing more miscarriages happening. So in them, if we suspect any DNA issues, then we see a DNA fragmentation index we can ask for. Otherwise, there is no need.
There is
And
no
if-
need to ask for
Yes.
DNA fragmentation.
No, and the count is less, you cannot do DNA fragmentation index only. There has to be certain count and good numbers to do a DNA fragmentation. If there are oligospermia, it's not possible to perform DNA fragmentation.
Okay.
Sir,
Yes.
the media usually that we get, it has a expiry date of about 3
Yes.
months or so. So if you purchase the entire media, we may not use it up in 3 months. So
Yes.
should we discard it off after 3 months, or can we get a single use vial?
No, generally single-use vials doesn't come. So most of the standard, this is a problem even with IVF. There are a lot of small IVF units that do cycles of 3 cycles, 4 cycles, or 5, 6 cycles a month. They also face the same problem with the media. Media bottle that comes is generally for 10 cycles. What to do with the remaining media? There is no way you can do anything about it. It goes waste.
Sir,
There is
should
no
we
single-
register a IUI clinic also, sir, with ICMR?
Yes, if you go to ICMR website, there is level 1, level 2, level 3 clinics. So there is a guidance. So based on what you're doing, whether you're doing a only sperm preparation, if you're doing without doing an IUI also, you have to. There is a level 1, level 2, level 3 clinics in ICMR. There is separate forms available. You can download and register.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Sir, at district levels, we don't have reliable labs. So if
Yes.
we advise patient for AMH, how can we
Yes.
rely on that AMH value before starting IVF, or whether to ignore AMH values and depend on only on age and AFC factors, or how can we reliable that labs?
AFC is number 1. What you see is what you believe. Always do a transvaginal ultrasound and count number of follicles. I showed you one ultrasound picture of AFC and normal AFC. You see yourself, you'll believe it. AMH will only help you correlating it.
Hello.
Only for correlation, AMH will help. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. AMH
Hello.
can be only for correlation.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, Dr. Rajeshwari.
Doctor. Tell me, madam.
Sir, excellent presentation, sir.
Thank you, madam. Thank you. So it helped.
Sir,
Hope everybody got helped by
Yes,
it, and
yes, sir.
it was
Yes.
useful presentation for all.
Very, very useful, sir. Sir, my question is, on
Yes.
the day of trigger, if there
Yes.
are about 4 to 5 follicles in each ovary,
Yes.
whether the trigger of HCG should be 5,000 or 10,000, sir?
5,000 only. See, even if when we have sometimes 20 follicles, we can use the 5,000 only. See that concentration of the drug at 5,000 IU is good enough for this regardless number of follicles. 5,000 is good enough. There's no use to 10,000. Sometimes you might have seen sometimes using 10,000. The logic behind using 10,000 is sometimes in some districts or headquarters or something, we are not reliable on the full storage of the HCG. How it has come from the dealer to your clinic, whether they have used a cold chain maintenance, we are not sure. So what we
Yes.
use, even if you're using 10,000, we use two different brands. So one brand, suppose if there is some defect in that brand, or if that is not properly cold chain maintained, so in that case, at least the other one will work as a rescue. So in those situations, 10,000, if you're using 5,000 of each different brand, not same brand.
Sir, one more question, sir.
Yes.
Post trigger, should we do an TVS scan to confirm the rupture of the follicle for IUI?
No, because when you do a TVS, before you do an IUI, you are going to contaminate the vagina with the gel or the cotton water using in the scan. So you should not use. Number one. And immediately sometimes it's not possible to see the ovulation. It's not always possible. Please call them on the next day or next day to that, and then you see. That will confirm ovulation. Same day seeing is not always ideal.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And another question here in chat box they asked, what is there any difference of results of using frozen semen versus pooling oligospermia? Yes, in oligospermia, pooling will not help. The bad sperm are going to die by the time you thaw them back. So please don't use. It's not that 10 days I'm going to pull it because it's just 1 million count. I'll use 10 days, it becomes 10 million again. I'll do the IUI. No, that is wrong. It will not help. Number one. And this frozen or freezing of this oligospermic samples, multiple samples, and then using it for IUI is not a good option. And do we get good embryos in urinary gonadotropins in the IVF? Is a question. Yes. There's no difference. You're using urinary gonadotropins or using a recombinant. The result is going to be the same. Next question is role of low molecular weight heparin in above 40 years of age. Low molecular weight heparin helps if there is any thrombotic factors or anything if you have encountered, you have done APLA studies or anything like that. But just per se, because they are 40 years and above, low molecular weight heparin need not be used and it's not helpful. Any other questions? Anybody wishes to ask any other questions? You're welcome.
Excuse me, sir. Suppose
Yes.
we want to achieve 37.5 units of HMG,
Yes.
as we don't have pen vectors. Can we
Yes.
keep it back in the fridge and use it?
Ideally, you should not keep it. You should discard it. But then, unfortunately, it can be used, but not recommended because
Okay,
it contaminates. It's just contaminated, and it can have side effects. If you
because it's
discard that,
reconstituted also, sir.
yeah, I understand, but not ideal to keep it. So,
Hello.
yes, madam.
Sir, almost all IVF centers are using ANTAC protocol. What is the best indication for agonist protocol, sir? In which patients we can use agonist protocol?
Agonist protocols
Almost
can be
99% IVF centers are following ANTAC protocol only for all patients, almost.
true. You're right. See, this is a very good question. Agonist protocol we use. Suppose you want to down-regulate in case of severe PCO, polycystic ovary in them. Or sometimes some polycystic ovaries they'll not respond to agonist because the LH is so high. In them, we want to down-regulate their efficient LH hormones. In them, number two, in case of endometrioma or adenomyotic uterus, wherein we want to reduce the effects of endometrioma in them. In these two circumstances, in endometrioma, you use long down-regulation in the sense every month we repeat an agonist depot 3.75 milligram agonist we give every month for 3 months and then we take them for stimulation. So it's called long down regulation protocol. This
Okay. Okay.
Anybody else wishes to ask questions? Please welcome. Ask.
See, some patients on day 2 of the cycle, they have asynchrony of follicle size. So that time, what we have to do, sir? That cycle.
Yes, in those people who have asynchrony, generally these are people with a low ovarian reserve. We see one follicle is 10 millimeter and one follicle is 2 millimeter, one follicle 6 millimeter. We see a lot of patients like this. These patients have a low ovarian reserve. In them, we see like this. We cannot stimulate in such a cycle because suddenly they become hyper. One becomes 18 millimeter, others will be still at 10 millimeter. So the cycle goes asynchronous even later part. So we have to put them on one cycle OCP. So that there is no ovulation this time, other follicles become uniform size, and next cycle you can take them for stimulation. That cycle.
One cycle is enough, sir. One cycle OCP.
Yes, generally it suffices.
Okay.
Can we use antagonist in IUI letrozole cycle to prevent LS surge? Is a question in chat box. Yes, Dr. Sharma, we can use antagonist.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
It's a wonderful presentation, sir. Thank you, sir. One doubt, sir. In this cycle, if we are using OCPIL, suppose for a cyst or ovarian cyst, immediately in the next cycle, can we use the induction? Can we go for ovulation induction?
Definitely.
Immediately after the usage of OCPILs.
Yes, yes. Next cycle, they get second cycle. Start, yes.
Okay, okay, sir.
If there is an ovarian cyst, should we cancel the stimulation, sir? Suppose on day 2, we find you are told about the estrogen level we should measure and then decide,
yes.
sir?
No, not always. If you see a cyst more than 15 millimeter, it is ideal not to start only. But in some situations, we get patients who come from out of country, and some patients who are in a hurry they can't waste one cycle. In them, we do a cyst aspiration, transfer cyst aspiration, and then start. But if they wish to wait, yes, we can make them wait for. If 15 millimeter or more, we don't even need to do an estradiol level. If they wish to start, if they are in confusion, then you can start.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
What is the maximum size of the follicle at which the trigger can be given? Like 18 to 20 millimeters, the optimal size, no, sir, of the follicle.
Up to 26, we have given and we have achieved pregnancy. Not more.
Up to 26, we can give this, sir. Sometimes we ask the patient to come on day 12 or so, but the patient lands on day 15 or so.
Understand.
The follicle reaches up to 25, 26 millimeter. Can we give the trigger then?
We can give, that is number one. Number two, always look for a next follicle. Sometimes in such people, another follicle would be coming in one of the ovaries. So that's an advantage for you.
Okay. But up to 20, 25, 26 millimeter, we can give the trigger. No problem. Okay, sir. Thank you.
There's another question here. What is the time interval between collection of the semen to IUI? So time interval is when you collect the semen, once the liquefaction happens, you should start processing it. As soon as you process it, the earliest you do is best, because we have seen that the sample comes from different place, headquarters, district headquarters to taluka headquarters in different containers and all this. They will not give a good pregnancy rates. So the earliest you do, the nearest you are to the place where the semen is being prepared is the best method. So there is no much of the time you should waste once the semen is done.
Half an hour is okay, sir.
Yes, half an hour is good.
So some sperm banks, they are making these frozen sperms available, semen samples available, and is it legal, sir?
Yes, if you if self their own husband's sperm, if they are using, there's not nothing illegal about it. But yes, if there are
donor sperms.
No, donor sperms only if there is an indication. If there is a consent taken, as per ICMR, there is consent forms. You have to take consent. and they have to be registered centers, and then it's legal. Otherwise, you will be in a legal.
Hello, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam, sir, when they transfer the donor egg, do they see the genetic material of that egg?
No. The mother
No.
who carries the pregnancy will not
Ah.
transfer her genetic material. It will be of donor's genetic makeup and her husband's sperm if they are used. But not
Ah.
the lady who is carrying will not transmit her genes into the baby.
Uh-huh. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anybody wishes to ask questions?
Hello, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
During the investigations, if the AMH comes below 1, suppose 0.7 or 0.8, should we repeat the AMH after 1-2 months? Because if it is not correlating with the antral count.
If it's not correlating, then you have to believe on what you're seeing. Then you now, instead of waiting for 2 months, now only you do it from different lab. If you think this report is wrong, you now only do it from a different lab. Why wait for 2 months? What if it is true and because very low level, less than 1 is very low, and
Yes,
there may be problem in waiting 2 months also. You cannot wait in such. Do in a
so we
different
can,
lab.
we can take the sample from another lab.
Yes, do it to another lab and see.
Okay. Okay, so thank you.
Anybody wishes to ask? Hope everybody enjoyed the lecture and
Hello.
yes, please.
Sir, for luteinized unruptured follicle, next time what we can do, sir, if follicle not ruptured, it's become like more than 2.8 centimeters, 3
Yes.
centimeters like that.
Yes. See, the main reason is there are two reasons for this. Most common reason is your HCG what you are used is not of a good quality. So it could be a batch defect of HCG or cold chain is not maintained. Make sure that you change your HCG trigger next time. So because many of the times this is drug induced issue. Number two, next time when you're stimulating, second day you do a scan for that patient. It might happen that there is a big size follicle already cyst, more than 15 millimeter already present, which is the one which goes into forming a cyst, which is not really a follicle. So these things you have to rule out. These two things you have to rule out next time.
So if there is repeated premature luteinization, should we refer her for IVF, sir?
Yes, that's a better option because it happens also in those people with very low egg reserve. There are such people who do AMH and see the egg reserve, they will be very low. So they are the ones which are 8 and 9 only you find a big size follicle. Them, yes, definitely.
Instead of HCG trigger, next time can we give agonist trigger?
No, agonist trigger may not help, but instead you can give a recombinant HCG. That is Ovitrel or some brands are there. You can try that.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, should it be given together, sir, dual trigger, HCG and
yes.
at the same time?
Yes. Someone has asked in the chat box, can you explain the antagonist protocol again? The antagonist protocol, from the second day of the cycle, make sure there is no cyst and you start on the injections, gonadotropins, either recombinant hormones like refagon or gonalep around 200 international units or HMG 300 international units every day. These injections will continue up to 6th day of injection. And after around 6th day of injection, you do a scan. If follicle has become 12 to 14 millimeter range, you start on the antagonist, Citrolix or Ascorlix 0.25 milligram, along with whatever gonadotropin you are giving. Continue till 10th day of injection. And then on 10th day of injection, you assess. Follicle is become 18 millimeter around average size. Again, give Citrolix, that is the antagonist, and then you trigger them. And after 36 hours, you do the egg collection. This is in short about the antagonist. Yes, any other questions? Please ask.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, in IVF stimulation, before giving trigger, we will stop that gonadotropins and antagonist, no, sir. So after no, how many days before we can stop this antagonist and gonadotropins before ovum pickup?
You have to give on the day of trigger. See, suppose I am giving trigger today night for a
Okay.
pickup which I will be doing day after tomorrow morning. That is 36 hours later. So
Okay.
today daytime also I'll be giving both injections.
Okay, sir.
Okay, both
Tomorrow no need of giving means day after tomorrow ovum pickup means tomorrow no need of giving.
tomorrow no. Tomorrow don't.
Okay.
So even the gonadotropin and the antagonist are at the same time.
Yes. Yes, they can be.
Hello.
Hello, yeah.
Sir, sometimes during IVF stimulation, patients used to take in the morning time injection. Sometimes because of some other problems, personal problems, they shifted to evening time because of some office problem, personal problems. Is it okay to?
I understand, but initially when they start, the same time you should decide what they want, because we cannot from morning to evening. If we shift, it is not very ideal, because it might, if they are already an antagonist, there will be antagonist. It will prevent premature LSR. If there is delay in antagonist, that might cause premature LSR. So especially when they start antagonist, it is not advisable to shift like that. Before they start, they can, but once they start with antagonist, it's very difficult.
Okay.
Another question asked is, can you repeat about the genetic combination in donor cycles? See, in donor cycles, please remember, either it can be egg donor or a sperm. There is a patient has azoospermia, no sperms, he will take a donor sperm. For his own wife, we can do an IUI or an IVF. In that case, husband's genes will not come to the baby. We get donor's genes with his wife's genes. Same way, when you are taking egg donor, we will be getting egg donors, that lady's eggs and her genes, and her husband, this partner's husband, who are carrying her husband's sperms. His genes will be there. She will carry the baby, but baby will not have her genes. But donor's genes will be there. Please remember this. If you are taking a donor, whoever is donating, their genes will come. Any other questions?
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, for donor egg, how to correlate, how to start stimulation simultaneously for a recipient for a FET and stimulation for donor, sir? How to, because their LMP menstrual cycles dates will be vary. How to start stimulation simultaneously?
both of them you have to start on OCP. Whenever they get the cycles, we have to start them on OCPs. And once at least 15 days of pills are done for the second one, whoever has started late, then we can stop the pills and then the periods will happen simultaneously. So then you can have simultaneously stimulation of the donor, simultaneously estradiol preparation of the endometrium for the recipient.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, 15 days OC pills enough, sir?
Yeah, 15 days is enough. So if you want to give 21 days, yes, we can give. But other person, if they started early cycle, they would have crossed 21 days already.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, in IUI, thin endometrium, which one is better, sir? Estradiol is better or sildenafil is better, sir?
In IUI.
For thin endometrium.
Estrogen, any day estrogen. Estrogen is always the first line.
Okay. But after, so when to start and how many days we have to continue the estrogen in IUI?
Very important. Once the follicle becomes dominant, that is more than 12 or 14 millimeter, then only you start. Before that, you don't. And this is also an indication wherein you can use an antagonist also.
Okay. No, after IUI also we have to continue estrogen till
Yes,
UPT.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Yes, please.
Suppose in poor endometrium, we have started this Proganova 2 mg. That is BID dosage we have to give, no, sir?
Yes,
BID for how many days we have to continue, like?
Generally around 15 days till you get UPT. In case of IUI, you can continue.
Till UPT is positive, till UPT result is come, up to then we can continue the Proganova 2 mg BID.
Yes.
Okay, sir. What is the, excuse me, sir?
Yes, please.
What is the role of tamoxifen in this ovulation induction cycles? If we are using, what is the dosage and how many days we can use?
99% of the times, tamoxifen is never required. Letrozole or clomiphene citrate will help it. And I never came in a situation wherein we need to use it. It's not required.
Okay. Nowadays, we are not using this tamoxifen.
Letrozole is good enough. And gonadotropins will do most of it.
Okay. But basically, first dosage is like we have to start with 2.5 mg OD, sir. Then if it's not responding, then go to BID.
All right.
Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, for severe PCO patient and less than 2 years of infertility, can we give OC pill treatment before starting ovulation induction for IUI?
Not required. Because OC pills are not going to help in any way other than just making them psychologically feel that their cycles are on time. It is psychological feeling. but it's no role in fact, you are suppressing the ovulation and again infertility is increasing. So no need of giving OCP. Directly you can start from stimulation.
No, to control hormonal imbalance because very
No,
severe.
that is only if they are not responding to the treatment. Only if there is no ovulation, then you can think that. First, you give the clonopin or whatever you are giving, and then see if there is ovulation. Then why to control? There is our goal is to have a egg release, follicular growth. If it's happening, then why to think of something that is not?
So obesity with infertility, can we give Orlistat for 2 to 3 months to help them with the weight loss?
No. See, Orlistat is actually banned in some countries. It itself independently is not a healthy weight loss regimen, number one. They have to be committed on the exercise and diet part. If you are waiting for 3 months, Orlistat is not going to do magic. If it has done a magic, then many people would have taken Orlistat and reduced their weights. Weight reduction doesn't happen with Orlistat. It's not recommended because there are harmful side effects.
Should we stop metformin once the pregnancy test is positive, sir?
No, it can be continued. There are a lot of papers whose there is no side effects of hormones.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, for gonadotropin with IUI cycle, if chances of OHSS will be there, that time what we have to do, sir, means like to prevent further OHS complication. IUI.
You have to stop gonadotropin. Number one. First step is stop what is harming it. And then if in such people, if you have doubt, don't start only. Well, you started, if you, so the idea of monitoring once you start is to predict if they're going to OHSS and you stop gonadotropin. So that the remaining follicles become atretic and they die off and few dominant only will come.
Any other extra medicines to prevent OHSS like Capgolin? Can we give it?
Can we give agonist triggers at that time?
What trigger?
Agonist triggers, sir?
Yes, agonist trigger can be given, but best is not to give any trigger. Just leave it alone. Ask them not to have intercourse. That itself will solve the problem. Triggering is not required in the first place. That cycle you would consider the cancelled cycle. Don't give treatment only if you're suspecting OHSS, because if they become pregnant, it's going to increase OHSS.
And when to call follow-up, sir? If when to call, if they have cancelled the cycle, there were more than 4 follicles, we have cancelled the cycle. When should we call them for any review or something, sir?
Next cycle only. No need to call. Ask them strictly no intercourse and call them next cycle.
Hello. For upper limit of number of follicles to stop to cancel the cycle, sir, is 4 or 5?
More than 3. More than 3. 4 is yes.
Even 4 also, it's better to stop cancel the cycle.
Yes. Because especially in small towns, we don't know how this is going to end up, because OHS is life-threatening. Don't want to risk.
Can we refer them for IVF, sir?
Yes, if there are more follicles, sometimes 6-7 follicles, IVF can be.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, how to recognize this empty follicles? Ultrasound wise, is there any?
No, madam. Ultrasound wise, it's not possible to identify. It is only after we take out the eggs we can identify whether the empty follicles or. So antifollicle syndrome it's called. Only once we do the aspiration of the follicles, we don't find any eggs, and then only we can ultrasound we cannot see, especially IUIs and all. It's not possible. Only what we see,
IUI, sir. I mean,
only what
IUI when.
only what we see is the follicle it's growing or no, and once it grows, we can see it bigger and ovulates or no. That's all we can see. Whether there is a egg or no inside that.
The role
Sir,
of
for hello,
Yes, please.
sir. For PCOS, which is the ideal gonadotropin, FSH or HMG, sir?
FSH is best.
What will be the ideal dose, sir? Should we start with low dose or?
Yes, if you're doing an IUI, best is to start low dose of 75 or maximum 150. Not more.
the role of Doppler, sir?
No, there's no role of Doppler. There's no use. It's not required also. None of the fertility thing needs a Doppler. It's not really useful. And there's no evidence for it. There are some doctors or some centers who promoting Doppler. Yes, I know. I don't want to name them, but there's no absolute.
The uterus dilatation, just an incidental finding, does it require a metroplasty or only after repeated ultrasound?
No, any metroplasty is not really a great way to conceive, because even after metroplasty, the pregnancy rates have not been good. So recommendation is not to do a metroplasty in such situations. You have to do a hysteroscopy and assess how big is one cavity. If it's okay, at least till preterm 7, at least some 28, 30 weeks, if we can pull, you can do embryo transfer in the bigger horn. Metroplasty doesn't really help.
Sir, you said there is no role of Dopplers, but they say, sir, for this thing embryo transfer, that RI and PI of the uterine artery, if it is above 3 and
Yes.
no, should not transfer. They say, no, sir.
Correct, correct. That happens when endometrial thickness is not good. In those situations only we study that. And when endometrial thickness is not good, with or without it, your treatment is not going to change. You are going to use sildenafil or estradiol, or your treatment is going to be the same. Doing a Doppler itself has no value or no idea, because if you are having a good triple layer endometrium of 8 cm and above, there's no need to do it.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you.
Sir, for gonadotropin IUI, how long can we wait for follicle development, like in PCOS patients? How many days we can give gonadotropins?
You can give gonadotropin. Generally, the ovulation happens by 14th day. You don't have to go above 10 or 12th day for giving gonadotropin, generally. But 12 days you should.
No, sir. In chronic low dose step-up protocol, we can gradually increase the gonadotropins. No, that time, how long? How many days we can wait for the follicle development?
Up to
Maximum.
20 days. Up to 20 days we can wait. We have had pregnancies on 26th day of ovulation also. We have had pregnancies.
Maximum 20 days we can wait.
Or we cancel this cycle. Call the next cycle. Start with a higher dose.
Okay. Hello.
Yes, please.
Sir, for IUI patients also, before starting induction, AMH is necessary, sir, for IUI also?
No. If you
Hello.
if you have a doubt on their egg reserve, follicular reserve, then yes. Otherwise, Okay, thank you all for attending then. If there's no more questions, we'll end the session. It was a great time discussing with all of you and a great knowledge share. I hope everybody is benefited with this lecture. And my phone number is displayed here. And please feel free to call me or WhatsApp me anytime. I'm sure most of you are on my WhatsApp with me. And please approach me any difficulty you have in treating your patients, any stimulations or any other complications, anything related to fertility. Feel free to ask me, and I'll be happy to help. And we'll be ending the
Thank you
session.
so much, sir. Very good webinar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.